Welcome to the Guerrilla Job Search System, created by David Perry and Kevin Donlan, two people in the job search industry who truly know how to help you get the job you want. David Perry is the Managing Director of Perry Martell International, one of North America's top executive search, recruiting, and placement firms. He is a veteran of more than 990 executive and search projects and has negotiated more than $174 million in salaries. He is the co-author of Guerrilla Marketing for Job Hunters and the author of the Career Guide for the High-Tech Professional. He is frequently quoted on trends and issues regarding executive search, recruiting, and HR in leading business publications, including the Wall Street Journal, which once called him the Rogue Recruiter, as well as IT World, EE Times, Network World, HR Today, and Venture Wire. He appears regularly as an executive search and labor market analyst for CBC News World. And Kevin Donlan is president of Guaranteed Resumes and the creator of thesimpleJobSearch.com. Since 1996, he has written and edited more than 5,000 resumes and cover letters and assisted nearly 3,000 clients in 23 countries. He's the author of 51 Ways to Find a Job Fast, Guaranteed, and co-authored with David Perry, Guerrilla Resumes. Kevin writes a job search column for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune and has been interviewed by USA Today, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Entrepreneur Magazine, CBS Radio, and Fox TV. Kevin is a frequent speaker on job search topics right across America. Gentlemen, let's be honest. I think most people would rather have a root canal than start a job search, right? But you promise with your system, the Guerrilla Job Search System, that you're going to take all the pain out of this process. So get me into the guerrilla mindset.
Okay, so let's start off by letting people know that guerrilla marketing is an attitude. What you want to do is tap into your future employers' timeless fixations with vanity and self-fulfillment and show them that by hiring you, they will become the corporate hero and score the corner office.
Okay, so how do I get there? I'm ready to start my job search. What are the things I need to do to get there?
Well, what you have to do to start with is begin with the end in mind. Right, Kevin?
Exactly. If we had to boil it down to one word, it might be clarity. You have to get clear about a few very important things. You've got to get clear about the job you seek, the 3 or so skills you have that can prove you can do that job, and the employers you want to do it for. You really have to get clear at the beginning. You have to begin with the end in mind and decide how you're going to get from point A, where you are now, to point B, that exactly defined target job.
And most people never do that. Mm-hmm. They flounder around for weeks or months, sometimes
scanning
even longer,
the paper,
right?
saying, I could do this, I could do that.
They never get a clear focus on what they want to do, and that's the major building block of this system.
Okay, so how do you get that clarity?
Well, you can ask yourself, you can ask your family, ask your friends, you can ask them, what do you see in me? And really, oftentimes, trusting your gut, if you spend 30 seconds answering the question, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? If I had $1 million and never had to work again, what would I do all day, every day? These are the kinds of introspective questions that will lead you to that answer, but it really starts with a lot of hard thinking. You've got to do that thinking at the outset, or most people fall into the trap that it's very easy to run away from things. You can run away from a job you hate. You can run away from unemployment. And if you're just running, any direction will do. But what we teach folks to do is to get clear about where you are headed. And you have to be very specific, and it requires some thinking. Because there is a specific job in mind that you're going toward, it requires you to say no to a lot of other possibilities.
Yeah, you actually open up the number of opportunities that you are qualified for when you focus with a laser beam on what you want to do. If you want to follow your passion and find the opportunities, if you push everything else away, all you see are the bridges and the connections to people, to companies, to opportunities, and it starts to make sense in your head where you want to go and who you want to talk to. This is not a hard process. In fact, one of the first things we do is tell people, take your skill sets, go to a website like Monster Board, throw in the skills and see what pops up in terms of occupations. That's one of the easiest ways to do it, right?
Yeah, you can use Career Builder, Monster.com. You can just plug in combinations of 2 to 3 skills that you would be happy doing and see what comes back. See what employers are looking for that match up with those skills. If you find 5 skills in North America, 5 job postings rather, that tells you there's not much of a market for those skills. You play with the combination and come back with more jobs. That's probably where you're headed, because that's where there's more demand. The more jobs you see advertised on Monster and elsewhere, that tells you that you're probably on the right track, as long as there's skills that you'd be happy using.
Exactly, and that's the building block, and everything else flows from there. How you do your networking, how you build your resume, and your resume is built with the outcome in mind of the job that you want to get, and nothing else goes into the resume. Nothing superfluous. Only what is going to get you to the interview and through the interview to that job.
Now, is it, in your experience, do most people know what their 3 key skills are?
Nope.
No.
Okay. Yeah. So how do you make that discovery?
Well, we have exercises that you do right at the front end. I mean, this is very much front end loaded, and unfortunately, and we say this to people, we're going to make you do the really tough stuff first. We're going to make you think. But we have tricks that sort of naturally draw it out of you. There's a couple of exercises that we make people do right in the first day or two, and from there it's a simple circling of, oh yeah, and it all ties together quite nicely in the front end. Because you can't do anything else until you've got these things nailed down.
So you're saying that this finding out what your key skills are, that could take some time.
It could, and you feel free to make mistakes and to go forward. I mean, any direction is better than none at all. And we teach folks, they'll say, I'm good at this, that, and the other thing. They end up being an expert in 7, 11 different things. You really can't be in someone else's mind. You're a jack of all trades. Correct. If you say my areas of expertise include, and it's a long laundry list of skills, that just doesn't cut it. We have found that the human mind can juggle about 3 concepts at a time before it starts getting confused. So you can say, ideally, you're going to say, I'm a sales manager. That's what I'm looking for. If you can't focus specifically on a title, then at least say, I'm in sales, marketing, and management. Tie it down to 3 skills. It's best to be specific, but broaden it if you need to and say, these are the 3 skills I'm best at. And then you do these exercises, and by asking the internet what the demand is for jobs and asking your friends and your colleagues and your family, you'll also build a list of about 20 companies where you'd be happy working. We call this a job shopping list. Most people go into the job market, they open up the newspaper or the website of their choice, and they start looking for jobs, and they really don't know what companies would be suited for them. This is like going shopping hungry on an empty stomach, and you're going to come home with a lot of crap if you're not going out with a list. And so people will take a job they think is nice, but it's with the wrong company. And they end up back in the market within 6 months because the company folded or laid them off or they didn't fit with that corporate culture.
Right.
See, and if you actually know what you want to do, when using our system, and you don't have to go through this, if you actually know what you want to do, it's like strapping a rocket to your back. Because we'll show you how to get into the hidden job market. And that's where 85% of all the jobs are in the hidden job market. And people don't realize that. Because for the last 20 years, everybody's gone about finding a job the same way we always did, which was read the newspaper, and now they just sort of sit back in their pajamas and they click and apply and click and apply and click and apply. And all that's done is the internet's just made it easier for more people to apply to the same jobs. So instead of seeing an ad in the newspaper, correct me if I'm wrong here, but instead of seeing an ad in the newspaper and maybe 50 people apply for a job and you've got 1 in 50 chance, now everybody sees it on the internet. And if they've got 10 or 20% of what's required in that job, they go click and apply. And so the HR departments and the hiring managers aren't getting 50 resumes, you're getting 5,000 resumes. So, if you like those odds, 1 in 5,000, this system's not for you. But if you want to get to the front of the line fast, one of the things we teach quite quickly is, once you've got your skills, how you dive into the hidden job market and get things that nobody else knows about, how you use Google and LinkedIn and a bunch of other things, Facebook, MySpace, even Twitter, to dive deeper and get at stuff that nobody even knows is going on. And the resumes that you develop from the first couple of days of figuring out what your skills are, these are advertisements that are like billboards for you on the internet highway that say, hey, I'm here, I'm available, this is what I can do. And they stop people dead in their tracks. And they make the phone ring for you as a job hunter. So rather than spending all your time chasing after jobs, you can actually get employers to chase you.
Exactly.
So the key thing is that what has happened for years in the past, and people are still doing this, they're seeing a job and they're trying to make them fit that job. Whereas what you should be doing is looking at yourself and going out and finding a job that fits the skills that you have.
Exactly.
Oh, we got to hire her.
Thank you,
Come on
David.
board. And you know, a test of this clarity to see if you're really clear before you're going to go forward full bore is to simply ask. Show your resume to a 10-year-old or to a neighbor and just ask, what am I looking for? And don't prompt them and see what they tell you. And they will, if they're not clear, if it doesn't say you want to be a sales manager, don't you? Yes, that's fine. But if you can read a resume, and we get them written by people with multiple college degrees, and we don't know what they want to do. And it has to be the same message on your resume, your cover letters, your online profiles, whether they be LinkedIn or Zoom Info or even your Facebook profile, your networking conversations, it all ties together. It's got to be the same unified, clear message. And you'll know it's clear and you're on the right track when you can just show your material to folks and unprompted they will tell you what you want to hear. They know what you're looking for and they can see from the skills you've chosen to emphasize that you were qualified to do it.
If you take your resume and tear off the top inch that has your name on it and give it to a friend of yours and say, a friend of mine wrote this resume, you know, and it's a common friend of ours, who do you think this is? And they guess it's you, you got a problem.
Okay.
You know, and the other major issue that we talk about, Kevin and I, a lot is a lot of job hunters consider a resume to be like a biography.
Yeah.
You know, 5, 10, 15 pages. I'm exaggerating, but not by much. And they put it together with everything they can possibly pack into this, and they expect that the recruiter or the HR manager is going to read this and figure out what they can do for them. Tain't so. It doesn't work that way. If you're not clear about what you want to do, then the person that's receiving your resume, it's not their job. And they won't see what you see, or they won't be able to see what you're hoping they see, because they just won't do it. They haven't the time.
It's not there. Okay.
Yeah, and a final idea, I guess, is that we always stress is you must do the thinking for the reader.
That's it.
It's not their responsibility to think for you, to figure out your value. You do the thinking for the reader. Again, it's thinking. It's one of the hardest things on earth to do. It's unpleasant. It's something we don't do very often. But if you do the thinking for the reader and it's clear, it's there in the resume and in all of your profiles and networking conversations, then great things happen.
So paint the picture clearly. So the key things here then, get clear about the job you want, get clear about the 3 skills that prove that you can do the job, pick 20 companies that you want to work for, and then set the deadline. Those are the 4 key things.
And it's very important, we forgot to mention, it's really critical, that you have to pick the skills. You have to figure out what your value add is to the employer. They can't just be any skills, because I can format a 3.5-inch diskette. No one's going to pay me to do that.
Right.
So they also have to be skills
That are marketable.
That are marketable, that someone's going to pay something for in the marketplace.
Okay.
And that's critical.
So there are job hunters, and then there are guerrilla job hunters. What's the difference?
Well, the difference is a regular job hunter will do a resume, throw it out blindly, or maybe semi-organized, and wait for something to happen. A guerrilla job hunter will be totally efficiently organized. They'll know who the top 20 or so employers are they want to talk to. They'll do the research ahead of time, and they'll have the message that they know the employer wants to listen to, and then they'll craft a resume that's bang on and hits them square between the eyes.
Guerrilla job hunters are always moving forward. Ordinary job seekers are rather passive. They hate rejection. They would rather send out 100 resumes by email than make 2 phone calls, because they're thinking I might get hung up on. So it's very passive if you're ordinary. The guerrilla job hunter is always moving forward, has a specific job in mind with a deadline. It's very specific. We're very specific with this program. And you're hitting employers with multiple tactics. It's not just a guerrilla resume, it's a guerrilla cover letter and some other tactics that we're going to get to specifically in a little while. But it's hitting them from multiple angles and never giving up. In sales, what is the rule of thumb? Is it takes 7 contacts.
And most people quit at 1.
Exactly. And one of the best things I've heard from David is a professional recruiter. You hear no all day, every day. But no doesn't mean never call me again. No doesn't mean I want you to leave the country. It means not today. So if you hear no from an employer, it means not today. But tomorrow's another day. And so guerrilla job hunters are always moving forward. They don't take no for an answer 6 times. Maybe after the 7th you can, but you've got to go forward, and they're organized. They use websites like jibberjobber.com, for example, I'll say that again, where you can manage your daily tactics and schedule things out. It's a little control system that keeps you on track for your job search, and it's a way to manage all your tactics and things you've done. So they're organized, they're always moving forward, and they know where they want to go. They have the employers in mind.
And it's really interesting because when you're asking people, so how's your job search going? When you ask that question, most people will say, well, I sent out 40 resumes today. What is that? That's not a measurement. That's just a tool. What really counts is I sat in front of 3 employers this week and talked about jobs. So that's the activity that you measure. Not the sending out the 40 resumes and waiting for the phone call. It's getting at the 3 meetings, and doing the work ahead of time that pre-qualifies them. That's what a guerrilla job hunter does. So when you ask the question, what's the difference? The major difference in my mind is a guerrilla job hunter actually talks to a hiring manager.
Right, and guerrilla job hunters don't confuse activity with productivity.
Yes.
You feel like you've done a lot. I've sent out 40 resumes. It's not even lunchtime. I've done a lot today. Well, is that productive or is that just being active? They're confusing efficiency with effectiveness is another way to look at it. You could be sending out 2,000 resumes a week or answering bunches of ads. Is that effective? No, it may seem efficient to zap out 2,000 resumes, but effectiveness is having 1 meeting a day, maybe 2, with people who can either hire you or refer you to a hiring manager. That is productive and that is effective, and that's what guerrilla job hunters do.
David, you said something interesting. You said that when you are going out and looking for a job, that you shouldn't be thinking about you and what your needs. I'm paraphrasing here, but you're looking at the needs of the employer.
Yes, what's in it for them?
That it's not about you.
Don't hire you because you're
a nice person.
You're cute and you're really smart. No offense, but so what? They want to hire you. No offense, but they want to hire you because they've got a problem.
And you're to solve the problem.
Exactly.
Right.
And you have to tell them, here's the problem I know you have. You may not know it, but here's the problem you have, and here's what I've done in the past to solve that issue. So, Kevin uses this line all the time. When you're going out looking for a job, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to sell money at a discount. You want to explain that?
Yeah. The idea being when an employer has a meeting with you, reads your resume, your cover letter, it ought to be a really bad idea to not hire you for an open position or in fact create a position for you just to get you off the street and away from their competitors. Because if you can show in your resume each position you've had in the past, I was paid, you don't have to confess your salary, in fact you shouldn't, but if it's very obvious that you were bringing in $500,000 a year or saving $250,000 a year, the numbers can be big, that's nice, but the point being if you can show that you have always made or saved more money than you were being paid in salary, then you are a walking, talking blue chip stock. You're a piece of capital equipment. You make more money or save more money than you're being paid. And if you can tell the employer, for every quarter you give me in salary, I'll give you back $1, then you're selling money at a discount. And if you were standing on a street corner selling $20 bills for $5, how soon before you'd be sold out? It's the same idea. If your resume gives that message, I'm selling money at a discount, Mr. or Ms. Employer, let's have a talk.
That's an excellent point, Kevin. Janet, what people really do when they put, an ordinary job searcher does, when they put together their resume or they go out looking for a job, is they fill their resume with responsibles for, buckets and buckets of it. And what we teach people to do is put in 3 to 5 accomplishments where you've actually made an employer money, saved them money, increased their efficiency, but they're quantifiable either from a dollar standpoint or a percentage increase, and you put that right in the resume, right at the top 3 inches, so it's the first thing that the employer sees, so they understand immediately, as Kevin was saying, that this person is going to make me money or save me money, and they can see the value, and if you can hook them to even take a look at it for the first 5 seconds, then they're going to read the entire resume. And the way we design these things is the call to action is to pick up the phone, and they want to meet you, and they want to know more.
Okay, so I guess the key thing is ask not what the employer can do for you, but what you can do for the employer.
Absolutely, and I'm going to put that in the next book. That's beautiful.
There are several important guerrilla job search tactics, probably about 20, 40, something like that. We're going to talk about a few of them right now. Give me an idea. What are the key ones, Kevin?
Sure. Well, it all starts with the guerrilla resume that David and I have developed over the years. And if we take a look at the one-page guerrilla resume example that we have, if you're looking at it now, I would bet that your eyes are drawn to that left-hand column. And that's where you will see examples of awards. You can also put corporate logos here. But the funny thing about logos and pictures is that the brain would rather look at pictures than read. It goes back to our caveman heritage, I suppose. But you're going to be capturing the eye of the reader and drawing them where you want it to go, which is down that left-hand margin. And you're showing them, these are examples of President's Award of Merit, things you've done in the past that are very powerful. And before they've read a word, they're already favorably impressed about you. And the rest of the resume is one page in length, and David will explain why in a second, why one page is a good length. But it shows it's very specific. The objective is to increase shareholder value. It's delivering high quality products. The profile is concise. There are a lot of numbers here. Some of the specifics have been X'd out for anonymity's sake. But this is a very concise and effective one-page resume. And David, why is one page often a good length for the resume?
Well, we live very much in an MTV world. We're bombarded with advertisements, and communication now is very much visual. Yet people still use a typical black text on white resume. Very boring. And if you're sending this unsolicited to an employer, do you think that's going to get their attention? No, it looks like a resume, black text on white paper. We see them all every day. And maybe it gets attention. Chances are 99% of the time it doesn't. It just goes in the garbage or gets filed somewhere else. So what we want to do is we want to shock them just for a second or two to grab their attention. So we put these logos down the left-hand side of the column.
And these are logos of places they've worked previously.
They could be, excellent question.
Awards. It could be awards.
Okay. Or they could be, if you're in sales and marketing, if it's marketing, you could have a picture of the product that you developed or inside the box.
Okay.
If you sold major accounts, you put the logos of the people that you sold to in the columns, because those might be coveted accounts for the company that you're approaching.
Okay,
And
but the logos would be explained in the resume.
Exactly. And
Okay.
what it really is when you get right down to it, and though sometimes people get offended, it's the equivalent of resume lingerie. We just want to tease them with what's possible, so they want more. And it's designed to have them pick up the phone and call you. And it could be it could be as easy as, they pick up the phone, as they've done with a couple of our clients, and said, okay, I got it, I read it, I like it. Can you send me a real resume? Okay. And they go, well, what do you mean? What are you looking for? And you just sit there and write notes what they're looking for, and you turn around and produce. What we usually produce is a 2-page guerrilla resume. Do you want to talk about that, Kev?
Sure, and this is an example of a 2-page resume. Again, where is your eye drawn? It's down that left-hand column, and these are all color logos where the client had worked previously. An additional thing we've introduced here, and you can do this on the one-page resume, by the way, but quotes from the CFO and other executives. These quotes can come from happy managers, happy clients, or happy vendors, people who have seen you at work, and you get these quotes from annual performance reviews, from letters of recommendation, even customer emails. As long as it's on paper and you can produce a hard copy, you can lift actual quotes from people and put them in your resume.
That's allowed.
It is definitely allowed.
Okay.
It's in the public domain. It's been said about
You just have to be able to prove,
Okay.
without a doubt, everything you put on that resume. Can I talk about this for a second?
Sure. Yeah.
This is one of our clients, and a great guy, came to Canada in early 2000 from a fantastic career overseas in Europe, and couldn't get a job for 7 years.
Wow.
He did 32, we didn't know this when we first took him on, he did 32 resumes.
Yeah.
And about 8 of them were done by professional resume writers. Didn't even get an interview. No ounce of a lie. And when we pulled up this thing and said, you have to do it this way, he resisted for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And then finally, he broke down. I think we just ground him into the ground. And he did his guerrilla resume, the 1-pager, and then the 2-pager, and he got interview after interview after interview. And everybody said, this isn't a resume, this is an advertisement, it's a brochure. Well, yeah.
But that is what a resume is.
Exactly. And he's accepted 2, not 1, but 2 6-figure jobs in the last, 3-4 months?
Exactly.
And he only kept one of them. But I mean that, after 7 years of nothing, give me a break. And he didn't really change a lot of the wording so much as the structure and the way he articulated his accomplishments and who he was targeting when he did this.
Yeah, so this is how it can work with the Guerrilla Resume, the short one-page version to get you in the door. And if requested, you can send this two-page version that we've produced for you here.
Now let's take a look at what a Guerrilla cover letter will look like. Kevin, tell me what's supposed to be in this letter, what it's supposed to look like.
Well, this letter is directed to a specific person, Joshua Smith. It starts out by dropping a name. Mary Jones spoke with me today. Well, how did our client get that name? She simply called the company. And it turns out Mary Jones was the receptionist. So she spoke to Mary about the position and then was perfectly able to drop in a name at the start of that first paragraph. So very simple but basic. And let me preface all this by saying, you know, a Guerrilla cover letter is really a sales letter. It's nothing to do with a traditional cover letter. But then she was very specific about where she'd found out about the position. She matched her qualifications in the third paragraph to the needs of the employer. And then asked in the closing paragraph, can we talk briefly? Respectfully yours, etc. And you see the signature there, it's in blue ink. That may seem trivial, but it's actually proven blue ink as a signature outpulls black or red or any other color in a sales letter. This is something that David and I know from our sales and marketing background, but no one has ever told you this when it comes to writing a cover letter.
And he's a professional copywriter.
In another life, I was.
In another life, you know, which is why it's so good. And his stuff he writes is so compelling. And the part that, really the beginning of a Guerrilla cover letter is the ending. If everybody notices, there's a P.S. at the bottom of that letter.
Right.
And Kevin will tell you that when you open your mail at home, the first thing you do is look down to see who it's from, then you read the P.S., then you decide, am I going to read the rest of the letter? So, you know, the most important piece is actually in the P.S., and that's what grabs you and gets you to read the whole
It's
letter.
proven to get read. So you put something in your P.S. that you want to get read, and it always gets read. It's pretty funny. Now, we'll explain about the coffee cup in a few minutes when we're talking about that specific tactic, but she said, I'll give you a call very soon to answer your questions you may have about the resume and coffee cup. And again, this is very, very cleverly tied together with something else she had sent. But knowing that this P.S. is going to get read, she put something in there very provocative, and she got an interview very quickly and received a job offer after that interview.
Okay, I have to ask you why it was important for her to start her letter with Mary Jones, that name of a person in the office. Is that connecting you to that person so it seems like you have an in already?
No, of course. It's you know, if the employer gets 100 cover letters like this, it'll only be one that mentions the name of the receptionist. And this is all designed to make the employer think, well, what's this about her? She knows Mary. And it starts a conversation in the employer, in their office rather, and it just generates results. It generates response.
Now let's talk about the power of the internet when you're doing your Guerrilla job search. David, how can we use the internet?
Okay, so let's stop here and take a look at this LinkedIn, but let's talk a little bit first about the strategy. You can either go looking for a job or you can have a job find you. And we're going to look at LinkedIn for a few minutes here, and pause for a second here. You're going to look at LinkedIn for a second here because LinkedIn is your profile on the internet. And you can, we're looking at my profile at the moment, but as a job hunter, you can go on LinkedIn and put up who you are and what you've done and what your accomplishments are. And if you see where the little hand is right now, it also gives you on your page when employers are looking at you, the opportunity to link to your personal website if you have one, or your blog if you have one. And LinkedIn even has some other tools out that we won't show you here, but that allow you to upload PowerPoints or open your own online discussion. So we're going to click now and take a look at my Perry Martell website, and that's my website. And we're going to go back to LinkedIn here for a second. And then we're going to click through, and that's if we can just pause for a second here, this is the Guerrilla Job Search blog.
Okay.
And there's all kinds of things that you can do for a blog. And, you know, this one cost me $4.99, and I can showcase my expertise as a recruiter, or I could showcase my expertise if I was a marketing person. Very little costs. And let's go back now to LinkedIn. It's a great way to show people that you're an expert. There's all kinds of information. And what we're looking at right now, if we can just pause for a second, this is very important. This is your personal URL for LinkedIn. And this is important because you can do a couple of things with this, including putting it on your resume. So employers use a one-page resume and you want to give them more detail. Well, rather than having them run off and have to Google you, you can stream them, guide them to the information that you want them to pick up. So you can use your one-page resume with a LinkedIn connection as your first interview. And there's a lot of things you can do with this. And it's completely free. Let's go forward. This is an example of some of the groups that I'm on. And you can put your picture up. Now hold for 1 second here. What I've done is I have my picture there. And if you go into LinkedIn and put in your picture as a job hunter, we know as recruiters that you want to be found.
Okay.
And very important. So let's do a people search. Top left-hand corner. Let's go look for someone. Let's say that I'm a job hunter and I want to work for, let's say Google. And so what I want to do is find vice presidents of Google. So let's type this in now. Type in the company as Google. So I want to get some insider information on Google. So let's hit the search button. Away we go. And there's a couple of hundred people there who work at Google whose profiles are there. I'm going to pick one that I'm kind of interested in. Let's see who this David guy is. Let's pick that one. Let's go back up and get David. There he is. I'm partial to Davids. It's a David thing. So just pause for a second here. This guy is a vice president of marketing at Google. There's all kinds of information that I can garner from him. I can see who he's connected to, and I can see who I know that he knows. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see that I'm connected at a first level to Andy. So I want to talk to David. So what I want to do, go ahead and let it roll. I'm going to go over to the right-hand side, eventually. See, that's who I know. I know Andy. So I'm going to go up to the top there, and I'm going to send him an email. Click on that. Beautiful. Let's pause here for a second if we can. So what this is this is the internal email function inside of LinkedIn. So I'm going to use my connection with Andy to reach out to David. So let it roll. I'm going to give him my phone number. And then I'm going to go down. I'm going to tell him why I'm contacting him. So I'm going to choose a category. So what is it? I think I want to request his expertise. I'm going to type in the subject line so that he'll read it. And this is an email that he's getting from LinkedIn through the LinkedIn system. So I type an intelligent subject line, and then I type David a message. Now David doesn't get this directly. So what I have to do is go down to the next box, which is another email message for Andy, and I'm going to send Andy, that's the message I'm going to send David.
Right.
But I'm actually not going to send it to him. I'm going to send that message to Andy and ask Andy to introduce me to David. Because David doesn't know me, but he knows Andy. So I'm going to go down and type Andy a message, just a real quick one. Andy, please expedite this ASAP. So I hit the send button. It goes to Andy. Andy reads it. He knows me. He ships it to David. And now we have a warm connection. And he'll call me up, or I'll call him up, and we'll now start to exchange information. Let's pause for a second here. Okay, Zoom Info. There are two major tools that all recruiters use, LinkedIn and Zoom Info. And Zoom Info is absolutely critical. And just like LinkedIn, it's free. Let's let this roll for a second here. Let's log in. I have an account. Okay, now stop from the screen. This is critical. Here's what happens with recruiters. And remember, there's 174,932 of us in America. The industry was $197 billion in fees. So when we talk about looking for a job and having a job look for you, this is what I'm talking about. You've got your LinkedIn profile. Now we're going to talk about your Zoom Info profile, and it's free. We're not going to show you how to do it. We're going to show you what Zoom Info looks like for me as a recruiter from the inside. So I've just started a search. So let's let this roll. I've just started a search, and I'm now going to be looking for a vice president of marketing.
As a recruiter,
As a recruiter, I'm looking for a vice president of marketing. Where am I going to get my short list of who to talk to? So I'm looking for a vice president of marketing, and I'm going to look in the software industry. So these are all fields I can fill in Zoom Info, and let's see what else. I think I want to look, maybe just New York City. So let's scroll down here and find New York City. And should be very important to readers because as a recruiter, this is exactly what I do. I find New York City. I scroll down to the search button. I hit search. Oh, no, you know what? I've changed my mind. I also want somebody with an MBA.
Oh, okay.
That's how specific I am. So now I'm going to hit the search button. And here's what happens to everybody. Okay, 84. Let's pause that for a second there. What you see on the screen are profiles that ZoomInfo has automatically scraped from the web and put into their database. But you as an individual can go and find your profile. And with a credit card, you can prove it belongs to you. They won't charge your credit card, but it shows them that you own that profile. As a recruiter, I started a search. I now have 84 candidates. That's enough to start a search. So if I'm looking for a vice president of marketing in software with an MBA in New York City, and you're not in ZoomInfo,
you're not going to get a call.
You're not going to get the call.
Okay.
And let's let it run here, and I'll show you what happens with LinkedIn now. Let's pick somebody that looks interesting. I see. Pause for a second. You see over in the far right-hand corner there? It has number 7. That means that candidate has come in himself and updated his own profile. And he did that 7 days ago. Now, I don't know why he's doing that, but as a recruiter, I assume, he wants to talk to someone like me. So that's why I'm going to pick him. So let's let that roll. There's the number 7.
Yeah, okay.
Let's pick him, get a mini profile of this guy. Let's click on it and get a bigger profile. Sometimes the software cooperates, sometimes it doesn't. Here we go. Now let's stop. You see the figure in the top left-hand side? It looks like a guy. If there had been a picture there, I would know as a recruiter that you want me to reach out to you. Because you're in ZoomInfo, you've updated your own profile, and you've put your picture in. That tells me that you're hot. So what I would normally do is I would cut his name, and I go back to LinkedIn, and I'd put it in LinkedIn and see if he comes up in LinkedIn. And if he does, that's the double check. I know he wants to be found. I call him first.
So this guy doesn't have his picture there. What does that tell you?
Yeah, I'm going to call him anyway, but I'm going to go through the list to find someone that's got their picture first. And what this tells you is if you're a job candidate, if you're a candidate and you're looking, very few employers know this. This is a recruiter's secret, I guess, until today. This is a recruiter's secret. If you're actively looking for a job, great to put your picture in LinkedIn, but put it in ZoomInfo, and you'll be one of the first ones to get a call. What did I forget, Kev?
I can't say anything you forgot. I mean, this is incredible to know that just including your picture on your profile. It's in political ads, you have to say at the end, I'm David Perry and I approve this message. It's like giving your stamp of approval to your profile. So when your picture is in your ZoomInfo and your LinkedIn profiles, you've approved it, you've been there, you're savvy, you know that these things exist, and people watching this now will know about it. So your picture is incredibly important, along with having the same message in both of your profiles.
Right.
Okay.
And for costing nothing, it'll get you the call. And
Okay.
it's a lot easier to get the call than to try and generate the calls.
I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but I do want to ask, because of the power of the internet and people doing searches on your name, how careful must you be about what gets on the internet about you?
You've opened a whole big kettle of fish on digital dirt. And
Because people do use that when they're looking at you as a
employers
candidate.
always do. All employers do. And frankly, it's a good thing you brought up, because most employers that are large will have a subscription to ZoomInfo. And at least they'll start there, and then they'll go off and see, what you've done on your Facebook account, and whether you're hanging upside down, without your top on by one leg, and what you're like that.
I'm not.
Well, I'm not either. But I had a woman who actually requested to link to me in Facebook, and I don't just blindly accept them. I want to know who I'm linking to, because you're known by the company you keep, right? And I clicked through, and sure enough, about 8 slides in, there she was. This is the exact one, topless, hanging from a pole. And I emailed back and I said, how do we know each other? Just out of curiosity. And she emailed back and she said, well, I was the girl in Washington in the 3rd row at this conference who asked you this question. I said, oh, okay. I didn't link to her.
Wow.
And it's simple things like that. And people don't realize that your Facebook and your MySpace can really trip you up.
Yeah.
And you've got some control over that, and you don't have total control over your digital dirt, but you do over your LinkedIn and you do over your Zoom info, for sure.
Okay, let's talk about using Google.
Let me show you why Google is the ultimate job search tool. Click on the advanced search function there, if you would, please. There we go. All right, we're going to put in some keywords in Google because in a New York minute, I got to find a job. I'm an advertising executive. I've just moved to New York City, so I'm going to look for jobs in New York City in advertising. How do I do that? I don't live there. Well, I'm telling Google to do this right now. And if you go down to the next tab, I'm going to ask it to give me a directory or a list of the conferences where people go in New York City. Now pause for a second. So what we've just told Google to do is go to the internet, and wherever you find New York and advertising and directory and conference, I want to see the results. So hit the search button now. Thank you. Now let's pause for a second here. We got all kinds of choices, and we've just set it up to, bring up the top 10. Let's pick the first one. Let's roll it. Nice and easy. What I've just asked it to do is bring back the first one, and I'm scrolling through. I'm looking for clues, looking for memberships. I'm looking for names. Let's go back. It's not all that helpful. So let's go to the next one down. Advertising New York. What does it tell me? Now pause on that for 1 second there. What we have here is the ultimate archive of all the advertising people in New York City that you're ever going to find anywhere. So we're going to read this site, and we're going to click through the links that we like, and we're going to find the people that own the different advertising agencies, and we're going to get a very clean, clear list of people to target and go and talk to very quickly. What did that take us? About 8 seconds?
That's amazing.
You couldn't do this you couldn't do this on a job board. You couldn't do this in a newspaper. And you couldn't do this on the phone. And this really wasn't even possible until about 3 or 4 years ago. But Google, by far blows away all the job boards. 42,000 of them. You'll never get as many results quickly as you will learning to do a Google search like what we just did.
Okay, so you just do an advanced search on Google, and this is what you are calling extreme networking.
Yeah, that's the start of the extreme networking. This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay.
We'll actually show you how to get in to specific companies and find people that used to work there so that you can phone them up and get the skinny about the company before you even approach them. And I guess we're going to talk about that a little bit later, right?
We do talk about that in our course, and it's also in David's book. We actually give phone scripts based on his experience as a recruiter, because he makes hundreds of phone calls in a week, sometimes in a day. But I mean, there's a script. We leave nothing to chance. So there's a script that you follow. But essentially, you are having you're calling people and asking for information. If you make 8 phone calls saying, there's a script again, but essentially you're saying, hi, I found you on Google, and I used to work at ABC Corporation. Do you have a quick minute? I'd like to work there, and I'd like to ask you a couple questions about it. Ask 10 people, 7 or 8 will say sure, and they'll agree.
Okay, so these are people that used to work at a corporation
Right.
you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
if you take your top 10 or your top 20 list, remember of the focus?
That's right.
And then you do this, and then what you're doing is you're eliminating companies for even before they exist in your mind. You're going, no, you know what? I've talked to 5 people there.
And they didn't like it there.
Mm-hmm.
And you did that because they used to work there, so they have nothing to lose by telling you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that happens, if you don't mind, the other thing that happens is by the time you get to the interview, when you've done this a couple times, if you decide I want to work for that company, by the time you get to
You've
that
got
company,
stories.
oh, do you have stories? You have inside skinny like you've never seen.
Yeah.
So when you call the hiring manager, because it's not that hard to figure out who he is, you say, Janet, my name is David Perry, and I was just talking to Kevin Donlin, and he thought that, when I saved ABC Corporation $15 million with their new widget, that might be something that would be of interest to you. Now pause for a second, because the guy on the other end of the phone's going,
Thinks you're a freak.
You talk to Janet? You know about my issues? You know about my problems?
How do you know
Absolutely.
that?
Exactly. And that starts a conversation. But you say, well, I really don't want to talk about it over the phone. Why don't we get together and have a quick coffee?
That's amazing.
And away you go.
At that point, you go from being an ordinary job seeker to, a guerrilla job seeker, a black belt, in effect, because you're on a level, an even level with these people you're talking to. You're not a supplicant begging for a job.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking as equals, having a business conversation, and they're going to be happy to meet with you or have a lengthier phone call. But we had a reader of David's, did this in Minnesota.
That's right.
And he had been following a standard job search for about 6 months, I believe, and he said to us, yeah, I'd exhausted my network. I'd gone to them so many times, and it blew it out. And he followed the scripts that we've created, and he did this Google job search method, had intelligent conversations. He said he built an entirely new network. And then really what networking is, it's talking to new people. Ideally, you're talking to your future coworkers. And so by following this Google system and making some phone calls, he said he built an entirely new network. He had multiple job offers, and the job he was hired for, and they were all six-figure job offers, by the way, this job was created for him. And that's the perfect ending to this, is that talk about the hidden job market. This is a job that didn't exist, but it was created for this man because he had such intelligent conversations with so many people.
And he built a network that was actually relevant to him. And that's important because people believe that traditional job hunters believe that networking is really sort of depending on their friends or their friends' friends to find them a job. And the challenge with that is
asking favors.
Yes, and the challenge with that is most people don't bother to build a network until they need a job. And then the network that they typically have, or the one that they're capable of building quickly, the people don't necessarily know who they are, what they're qualified to do, or what would be an interesting job for them. So they don't help you because they can't. So when you build it on purpose like this, you're building a network that you know is going to result in the job that you will actually take. That's the big difference. It's not rocket science.
Let's talk about this coffee cup that has been sitting on this table for quite a long time now. Kevin, what is the significance of this cup? Because we did talk about it in the Guerrilla cover letter.
We did. We hinted at it. This was sent out by Sally Smart. It's a standard coffee cup you'd get at your local coffee shop. She mailed this with the Guerrilla cover letter and the Guerrilla resume together, along with, there's a $5 certificate, a gift certificate for the local coffee shop. She mailed it to the employer in a box. In direct mail, this is called lumpy mail. When you get a piece of lumpy mail, you're more curious about it than standard mail, right? So it's a box, so this gets opened quickly. And again, she had done the research. She knew that Mary Jones was the receptionist, and so this is a very targeted cover letter. And the P.S., which I'll read again, I'll give you a call very soon to answer any questions you may have about the enclosed resume and coffee cup. How soon? You may be surprised. Now, what Sally had done, which is incredible, but we told her to do this, she sent it with FedEx 2-Day, which comes with a delivery notification. She got an email saying, bing, it was delivered at 10 o'clock. At 10:20, she called and said, hi, I'm Sally. I'm calling about the coffee cup. And the guy said, what? And so I'm calling about the coffee cup. You just got it, right? Well, yeah. And so I said I'd call, and here I am. And so she mailed out 3 of these, got terrific feedback on all 3 in an interview on one of them, which turned into a job about 2 to 3 weeks later. But you can send these out, and we've had a batting average about 300, 400 in terms of getting interviews that lead to either job offers or referrals to other openings. So the coffee cup with a $5 gift certificate, it could even be $2, and if you're totally out of money, nothing. But I mean, let's have a coffee with a targeted cover letter and the Guerrilla resume in a box. We call this the coffee cup caper because it is, it's pretty nifty, but that's the coffee cup caper. Now, David, tell us about this box.
Well, I get a lot of, because I've been doing this and because of the book, I get a lot of interesting stuff in the mail. And I got this one day, and I'll show you. There's nothing really inside it except for a card that says, "Think outside the box," and the guy's name on it. Think outside the box. Well, sure enough, didn't he put this? His message to me was this, and it says, synergy, a hope for or real effect resulting from different individuals working together and stimulating new ideas that result in greater productivity. Great minds think alike. And then his name, .com. So he built a website. So I go straight to his website. And of course, I was hooked, right? Yep. I was hooked, called him in, had a great interview, great guy, great candidate. Cost him about, I think he said $7. Now, you don't want to send out 100 of these.
No, but the job you really want.
Yeah, for $5 or $7, you know it's going to get delivered. You know it's going to get opened. This got delivered to me 7 years ago. You still have it. I've never thrown it out, and I talk about it all the time. Jeff is getting mega publicity for this thing that he did 7 years ago.
Okay, I want to open this up again because we didn't talk about this, but it says, yeah, think outside the box. But on the back, it does have his website.
It does.
And it's got all of his credentials.
Exactly.
He's a 40 under 40. He's all this other
guy.
stuff.
Oh, you know, it was classically done. And of course, I called him like instantly, and he knew it was me because he got call display. And I said, Jeff, and he's laughing his head. He got my package, eh? Yeah. When can I have coffee? And away we went. And that's the kind of stuff that is interesting. It's easy to do. It's inexpensive. And once again, it's not your black text on white paper. I mean, when was the last time you watched black and white TV? We live in a full-color MTV world.
Yes. Now, speaking of full color, I mean, these are examples of another tactic we teach, creating a white paper. Turn your expertise,
Okay.
things you've done before in the past, into a white paper, and that's really a glorified, report. 7 to 10 pages. You can have these printed up. How much did these cost you? David?
$1.90. Let's hold that up to the
$1.90.
camera so that people can have a good look at that.
Full color, cover and front and back, and it is black and white on the inside. It's 8.5 by 17 paper, and having it printed and stapled, $1.90.
Now, what you cover, your topics are going to be relevant to the employer. You've got to research it. It can be the same white paper for everybody. It could be relevant to an industry, or it could be relevant to a specific employer. It's obviously easier to do 7 pages on your industry, but just something that demonstrates your expertise. And by the way, if you're creating a white paper, a lot of people get writer's block. We've told clients, do 7 bullet points and do a 7-page paper, and nothing happens for 7 weeks. So we say, okay, do 1 bullet point this week and make it a blog posting. And if you do it bits and bytes, 1 bullet point a day or a week, you can create a blog posting over a month or so, and you're getting search engine exposure. And then at the end of this 5 to 6 weeks, you've got a white paper. And let's tie all this together, David. We had a client, we'll call her Crystal.
Okay.
And this was one of the tactics she used. And what we teach is a concept called the force multiplier effect. It is a military term.
Yeah, so you use multiple tactics
Yes,
all at
okay.
once to converge on one target. So you don't just send a resume. You send a guerrilla resume. You send a guerrilla cover letter. In Crystal's case, she got rejected because when she called this organization, the recruiter, the headhunter said, sorry, but we have enough candidates. We don't have time to interview you. So she called, and Kevin said, well, just reject the rejection. So she sent them a letter rejecting the rejection. And what she did was, in the cover on her letter, was she went in and got a quote from the CEO of that company and put it on the front of her letter and tied it into her statement that she put in her resume and sent it to him. So it
Directly to the CEO?
So it gets passed down to the guy who rejected her. And so he calls, and she has the interview. And she got through 5 interviews. And she did the first interview. She got invited back. She went the next time. She did in the interim, she did a 30, 60, 90-day business plan. And then she went in there for her second interview, and she brought in a PowerPoint. So she said, yeah, it's great, and let's talk about this. And here's what I've done a competitive analysis to show you the PowerPoint. So she went through a competitive analysis on the PowerPoint, and then she did a couple of other things. So 5 interviews, okay? And she was a new grad who had moved from New York down to Washington, knew no one, and got involved with us. And it was a newbie position at the company, and it paid $25,000.
That's what she was hoping for.
And that's what she was hoping for, and that was the high end. And when she was confessing this to the group, she admitted she didn't get $25,000. And you could just hear everybody go, oh. Nope, she got 42. So, it ended well.
Right.
But this is the kind of stuff that we teach. And it goes back to Kevin's original point. No just means not today. So you got to get it. Remember Babe Ruth, the baseball player? I mean, he hit more home runs than anybody else. Well, he also struck out more than anybody else in history. So get up again, swing again.
Get back on the horse. So the key thing is, we have shown all these different tactics. Don't just send one to each individual employer. You have to hit them with the force multiplier effect. Send them a whole bunch of different things so you keep popping up all the time. Like, who's this person, David Perry, and why is he still in my face?
Yep.
Let's talk the hidden job market. What it is, how do you get into it, and how it can work for you.
Well, they call it the hidden job market, Janet, because jobs exist, but they just haven't been put down on paper. For example, when a company is expanding, they may or may not want to tell anybody, or the hiring manager may or may not have time to actually sit down with HR and scope out a job, because he's got a job he's doing, right? So the job is real, but it remains in his head. So when people talk about getting into the hidden job market, it's not really hiding, it's just not obvious. And one of the things we teach people to do is use the Guerrilla resume to get there to do it.
Yeah, and you need to do that. You use David's Google search technique to find companies where you'd be happy working. But as David said, the job first exists as a problem in the mind of the manager. And if he or she decides, well, I need someone to fill this, they first look internally.
Right.
They try to promote from within. And if that doesn't work, then they ask their employees, hey, we're looking to fill this position, who do you know? That's the second stage. The third stage is, if everything else fails, they advertise it. But if you can have a conversation with the hiring authority in one of those first two stages, I've got a problem to solve, or we're looking for someone internally, or, you know, who do you know, employees, can you contact somebody? If you get into his or her mind in those stages, then you have no competition. Instead of competing with 500 people who are applying to an advertised job, you have no competition, you're the only one. And so the more conversations you can have with hiring authorities, the more people who know about what you're looking for, the faster you can get into the situation where you're the only game in town.
And you tend to get a better salary, and you tend to be able to scope the job around your particular skills a lot easier when you tap into the hidden job market than when you see something that's in the newspaper and they're using a checklist.
Mm-hmm. And is the hidden job market also the job that the employer doesn't even know that he needs filled, right?
They just know they have a problem. Something's wrong. They have too much money and they need people to ramp up production. Or they don't have enough money and they need people to sell more. So there's always a problem. No one's ever in a perfect situation. So the more research you've done and you know about those employers, you can write a guerrilla cover letter that's going to target them exactly. You can have a networking conversation with someone you know or someone you have just met using our Google techniques to meet those people. But you're right, it's not going to be publicized. It's a nagging problem in the mind of the hiring manager.
And it brings you up on top because you're hitting the hidden market where everybody else is going and setting their resumes to all that stuff that's published.
Right. Everybody else is clicking and applying. You're looking to solve an issue. Contest is over.
And you can bet, too, just a final point, the advertised job market, it's what, 20% of the job market?
15.
15. So for every one job you see advertised, there are more than 4 others that are not advertised, and they're just out there. And so it's like a bunch of penguins on the top of an iceberg. Most of the action's down below. If you want the fish, get down there and get below. But these penguins are all running around on the surface of this iceberg, chasing a limited number of fish, and it's all down below.
And I'll give you the perfect example. We talked about this the last time. Monster Board and Career Builder are the biggest job boards. They each have 0.75% of the job board industry. Okay, and the job board industry only covers that 15% of the known jobs. So if all you do is apply to Monster Board and Career Builder, you've only covered 1.5% of the 15% of the known jobs. Everything else it's like, what's that expression? Acres of diamonds. You know, there's all kinds of diamonds out there, and you're going looking somewhere else, and it's right in front of you.
The employers hate to advertise. They hate to interview 100 people. Legally, you must acknowledge every resume, every application that comes in. They'd rather pull their own teeth than advertise a job posting because they're going to get 500 resumes by email in the first few hours and 499 will be irrelevant. They just hate to advertise job openings. So you're doing everybody a favor when you have these conversations. You're not being a pest. You are saving them time and money by hiring you off the street before they have to go to the time and expense of advertising a job.
David, you're a recruiter. How should guerrilla job hunters approach you?
Thank you very much for asking, and let me give you the sneak attack on how you get to a recruiter that'll work with you. What you do is you take your top 10 or 20 companies and you phone the HR director at each one of those companies. Now, this is not hearsay. And you phone them and you say, I know you're not hiring, but who do you use as a recruiter when you go outside? And the HR manager is going to pause and say, why do you want to know that? I said, well, because I know you're not hiring, but I'll bet whoever you use also supplies your competitors. So if you were me, who should I be talking to? Well, what are you looking for? Well, I'm not I'm not talking to you about a job, so let's put that aside. I just want to know who I should use. And the conversation goes from there. Here's 2 pieces of information you get out of that. They will eventually tell you who the recruiter is that they use. And you phone that recruiter up and say, hey, I was just talking to Janet Eastman over at, and she suggested that we should have a conversation. And that recruiter who knows her customer says, okay, great, when can we meet? Because they're not going to chance blowing you away, right? Or blowing you off, sorry. And what happens also is that the HR managers like to be cheap and save money. And they're going to go, oh, well, like, why don't we have coffee and meet? Well, no, well, you know, I'm not really looking for a job, and I know you don't have any advertised postings. And they'll talk you, I've seen this so many times, they'll talk you into coming in and spending some time with them. And boom, you're in. And you go through your series of questions, ask them what they're looking for, where they are in their product development, what new products are coming out, what new services, what their issues are, and all of a sudden you've got the HR manager confessing their sins to you, and then you go, you know what, I did that over there, maybe that would apply, and they're begging you to come and work for them. Sneaky, yes. Smart, absolutely. Guerrilla, darn right.
Any pitfalls to doing that?
No.
In a word, no. So let's say you've gone through all of the guerrilla tactics to get to the point where you finally got that interview. How do you prepare for that interview so that you don't disappoint them after blowing them away all the way up to that point?
Sure. The mindset to adopt is what we call starting work before the interview. You've got to show up at the job interview as if it were your first day on the job. You're not a tourist there to learn about the company, which most people are. They just want to get a tour and walk through and see the photos on the wall. If it were your first day of work, however, how would you show up? What would you be ready to do? Well, you'd be ready to perform your skills right there in that interview room in front of your boss right now. So we teach people to research the company, find out their problems, their opportunities, and bring with you some information, some expertise, or some tangible evidence that you're already working. And we've had this work.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Sure.
And ask you to explain when you first did this yourself, because this is really interesting.
Yeah.
Can you do that? Can you
well,
talk
it's
about who it was?
I'm condensing a 6-minute story into 30 seconds. I was hired to do some copy editing back in 1994 by a marketing communications company in Minneapolis, and I called them to get back issues of their magazines. This is before the web; it was still print stuff. So they were couriered over to me. I looked through them and found typos in each of the back issues. Not a lot of stuff, but I had read through it. And so I put Post-it notes on the typos. I went to the interview, which was one of the skills was proofreading. And I said, at an opportune moment, I opened up my briefcase and had these magazines. I opened them up and said, if you hire me, I can keep this from happening to you again. And I slid them across the table, and they saw the typos, and I was hired. So I had started work
already
before the interview, right? Well, we had a client who was a software developer. He couldn't bring in a software program, so what he did was he interviewed some employees, found out things they disliked about their software development process. He went home and wrote a white paper, and it was just basically going through his email outbox, questions he had answered anyway, or things he had written about anyway at previous employers. He came up with it was 5 ways to improve software development for ABC Company. He called up the hiring manager, said, I interviewed your employees, and I've got a white paper based on their feedback. You've got these problems. I've solved these problems. Would you like to see my white paper? Of course. So he sent it, and he was interviewed and hired. So the key thing here is these people, me and our clients, we've had salespeople bring sales leads to the job interview. You're just demonstrating, treating it as an audition. It's your first day of work. However you look at it, demonstrate your skills in the interview. And that's the smartest and best thing you can do because no one else is doing this. People are showing up as tourists, and you don't want to hire tourists. You want to hire smart, self-directed employees. Now, David is coming.
Can I tell them about this?
Yeah.
Can I tell them about what we're doing?
Yes.
Now, this is, we're both going to burn for this one, okay? But here's how you turn one interview into 5, okay? You go on the interview. You ask your questions, they ask their questions, and eventually someone's going to say, is there anything else you'd like to know? And of course, you've done your research because Kevin's prepared you well for that. And you say, well, I understand these are your 5 competitors. And I understand, that they're in this market, they're in this market, they're in this market. What is it particular about competitor number 1 that, keeps you guys up at night? What are they doing? And when they tell you, you're writing this down feverishly. Now, you should know what they are because you've gone to the competitor's site, right? Mm-hmm. So you thank them very much and you go on your merry way. And you send the guy or the gal a thank you note, but that's the next day, because what you're doing out in the car as you're driving home is you already have the names and phone numbers of the hiring managers of their 5 competitors. You've done that ahead of time. So when you get out of the interview, forget about sending them a thank you note. You talk to Harry over at competitor XYZ and you say, Harry, my name is, and I just came out of an interview with such and such a company, and I don't think I want to work there because apparently you do this and it keeps them up at night, so I think I want to work at your company. Can we have a coffee? And of course, you know what all the sore points are. And people say, well, is that fair? Of course that's fair. Because everything you say in the interview, the interviewer is going to use against you, even if they hire you. Yeah. But you don't have a relationship yet. So if they're short-sighted enough to confess all this to you, shouldn't you, as a true guerrilla, grab that information and use it to get the job you really want?
Yeah, that's brilliant. And there's a chance that they won't say, I just met you. I'm not going to tell you what keeps me up at night. And then you can go to your research. Well, it might be this, because it says here that XYZ just came out with a new widget, and it may cut into your market share. Would that be one of them? And you can feed them things, and they'll say, well, yeah, that sucks. That's bugging us. And so based on your research, if they don't give you those answers, again, we always teach people never ask a question you don't know the answer to. So you probably have an idea anyway, and if they aren't forthcoming with what's keeping up at night, then you just feed it back to them. And either way, you're either going to look like the smartest candidate they've seen all week, or, as David said, you can go call their competitors. And that's how it works.
And you don't think Harry's going to call George and say, George, this guy just got out of an interview. No, not at all. He wants to know what you as a candidate are going to tell him. It's hilarious, and it works so well.
Wow. So is that it for preparing for the interview?
the standard, you can go through, there are questions that everyone's going to ask you, of course, and you've got to practice these answers, of course. You've got to be fluent and comfortable, and you've got to be able to defend everything in your resume. Our clients tell us that the hiring manager, the message they keep getting is, I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen anything like this. The guerrilla resume is just unique. It's its own, it's just a rare bird. And people get this and they say, I've never seen anything like this. They end up using the resume as a script. And you've taken over the interview. They're asking, well, what about this? What about this? And they're using it as a script a lot of times.
Because when you write your bullet points, we teach you to write a story behind every one of those bullet points. So you own that. You own that real estate on the resume. So when they say, well, what did you do here? You got your story ready to tell. So, the numbers come to life. And that's what interviewers remember. They remember the story. And they remember you because of how passionate you got when you were explaining your story. It's really unfair to other people waiting out in the hall to be interviewed, but that's life.
So don't be a tourist.
Don't be a tourist. And tying this all back to where we started is begin with the end in mind. If you know this is the job for you and this is the company for you, you're going to have the motivation to do this research and to uncover this smart evidence that you can do the job. And when you show up in that interview, you'll be doing the job. And it'll just be very logical to offer you that job.
And remember, the interviewer doesn't want to be there any more than you do. If they've called you in for an interview, they want to hire you. They want to hire somebody. Mm-hmm. And you have to go in understanding that, barring doing something really weird, they're going to make you an offer because they want to.
Or you wouldn't have got there in the first place.
You wouldn't have gotten the call to start with. They've got a problem that they know you can solve, and you've outlined it in your resume, things that are of interest to them because you've done all the guerrilla research. So they've got the ticket in front of them with the winning lotto number, and it's got your name on it. All you have to do is step up, tell the stories, and collect the prize. Pretty simple.
Thank you very much, Kevin Donlan. Thank you very much, David Perry. What a wealth of information these two gentlemen are. And believe it or not, we have only just touched the tip of the iceberg in the last 60 minutes or so. There is so much more information from these gentlemen. If you want to go to the website gmforjh.com, it will certainly help you with your job search now and any future job search. Remember, if you are doing a job search, Do it guerrilla style.